the Jaguars' biggest weakness is their rush defense, which is giving up 133 rush yards per game, as well as slightly better than 1 TD per game. In total, it ends up being the number 6 worst fantasy rush defense, 180 all-purpose yards, 1 TD. So you're going to start Justin Forsett and feel real good about his game. He easily should get you 1 score, and cross your fingers he gets you 2. I like Joe Flacco as a 1-week pickup and play. If you are one of those people that, let's say, had Cam Newton and you're feeling a little uncomfortable about picking up Derek Anderson, which I wouldn't blame you, and you want somebody that's more established, you have more of a record, and somebody who's got a body of work you can rely on in making your decision, it's Joe Flacco. The defense is giving up 245 yards per game and about 1.5 touchdowns, so you're hoping to get you that second one. And then you got to like Steve Smith this week as a wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, especially given given what appears to be that it's going to be unlikely that Torrey Smith plays this week. For the Jaguars, completely different story than the Ravens. You can't like anybody there. Denard Robinson was just put on IR today, so who do you go with? Toby Gerhart, Storm Johnson, against what ends up being the number 4 rush defense in the league? I don't think so. And then in terms of the passing game, which the Ravens seem to be more susceptible to the pass, you got a guy like Marquise Lee or Allen Hurns. You might be able to play them as wide receiver this week, but, I mean, are those the best starts in this game for the Jaguars? Really? Is this who you want to try and get you to over the hump and into the next round? Hopefully not. Hopefully that's not your situation. There are obviously 2 receivers that should be in the conversation, with Marquise Lee having the slight edge over Allen Hurns. But at the end of the day, you want to be relying on the Ravens that I mentioned and not the Jaguars. Ravens win at home.
The Green Bay Packers travel to the Buffalo Bills. The Bills are sitting at 7-6. The Packers 10-3 and playing the best football out of anybody. They did kind of hold on for dear life last week, but you know what? They got 24 points up in the second quarter, and really, honestly, didn't seriously look back. Aaron Rodgers 24 of 36 for 327 and 3 touchdowns. Jordy Nelson 8 catches for 146 and 2 touchdowns. James Starks and Eddie Lacy each ran for about 75 yards apiece, and each scored a touchdown. For the Bills, they lost to the Broncos, but it's a loss. But they made Peyton Manning look kind of human. I mean, that defense is legit. 5th overall in yards per passing yards per game, 8th overall in rushing yards per game. But somehow they're I'm sorry, I'm looking at that backwards. They are the first ranked scoring defense, and that plays out big in this game. It is a game in Buffalo. I was tempted as heck to make an upset pick here, but I just think the Packers are doing it too good right now. I'm sticking with Green Bay on the road.
The Packers boast the number 1 scoring offense in the league at 32.5 points per game, and I don't think we've seen a defense that's been able to manage the kind of offense that Aaron Rodgers and company can generate. And despite the fact that the Bills had quite a game against the Broncos last week, I would still go with the Packers. And I like Aaron Rodgers. As I mentioned in the beginning of the show, I would play Aaron Rodgers. He's a top 5 start this week. I would play Jordy Nelson as a wide receiver 1. I would play Randall Cobb as a wide receiver 2. I could look at Devontae Adams as a low-end wide receiver 3 or a flex play, because if Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb get bottled up by the defense, guess who's going to be open or in single coverage, and that's Devontae Adams. I also like Eddie Lacy in this game. Part of the reason being we saw what C.J. Anderson and Juwan Thompson could do to the Bills last week on the ground, which was surprising, absolutely surprising as to what they did and how they did it against a rush defense that up until last week had only given up 6 rushing touchdowns on the season. So you got to like Eddie Lacy to be a low-end RB1, because he's a guy that can do it. He can get the tough yards for you. I would shy away from James Starks just because this is a week not to be playing a running back like him if you can avoid him in such a matchup. For the Bills, you got to like Kyle Orton as a low-end QB1. Sammy Watkins is, in my opinion, for the fantasy playoffs, a must-start. He's a must-play wide receiver, too. Brett Jackson, low-end RB2, better a flex play. And It's a decent matchup for Scott Chandler, the tight end, and I want to mention him because he, from time to time, he has a pretty good game, and certainly he is sensitive to the matchups, and this is a decent one for him. The only exception I would make to it, if you've got a better tight end who's been more dependable, I would not put my fantasy team's fortune on Scott Chandler in this particular week just because of his inconsistency. But I like the Packers on the road. This is likely going to be the number one team coming out of the NFC out of the NFC for the playoffs.
And we have another caller. Let's head over to the phone. Caller, state your name and the city, first name and the city you're calling from.
Hi, this is Riz from Oakland. How are you guys doing?
Good, and you?
I'm good.
It was Riz?
Yeah.
Okay. What's your question, Riz?
Okay. So I have Joyce Bell, Dan Heron, and Ryan Matthews as my backs. Kerwin Williams, Terrence West, and Jeremy Hill are also available, and I need to start 3 of them. So
right.
Which 3 do I go with?
All right. Slow down a little bit for me, okay? Who was your first running back?
Joyce Bell.
Joyce Bell. I caught Dan Heron. I caught Ryan Matthews, and then you mentioned a couple guys on the waiver. Can you mention them one more time?
Kerwin Williams, Terrence West, and Jeremy Hill.
Jeremy Hill of the Bengals.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, the first thing you're going to do for me, Riz, is you're going to drop one of your running backs or drop one of your players, one of your low-end players, and go get yourself Jeremy Hill. He's a must-start this week, is a solid RB2. In fact, there was news that broke today that the offensive coordinator for the Bengals is very much interested in letting one of his running backs carry the load, and more than likely it's going to be Jeremy Hill, and it's a very good matchup against the Cleveland Browns, who I want to say are top 10 in most fantasy points allowed to the position. So you go get him and you start him, and then the second running back I would start is Joyce Bell. I think Joyce Bell has a solid matchup this week against the Vikings, and he's another guy that can go get you the tough yards. The reason why I don't like the other running backs right now is Dan Heron against the Texans. I think this is going to be the Andrew Luck show, just like it was last time these two teams played. Kerwin Williams has a very difficult matchup against the St. Louis Rams, and Ryan Matthews, as of today, did not practice. It's unclear whether he'll even play. But the bottom line is in a game where you expect a high score, you expect the Chargers to move away from the rushing game for sure after the first quarter, and it'll be all passing. So that's why I like Joyce Bell and Jeremy Hill. All right, Riz, thank you for your call.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Have a good night. All right, there you have it. 585-633-7487 if you have a question of your own. 585-633-7487. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers travel to the Carolina Panthers. Tampa Bay sitting at 2-11 in what can be labeled as nothing else but a complete sheer disappointment for the first year of the Lovie Smith era. The Carolina Panthers 4-9 in a tragic event the other day with Cam Newton rolling his car over. Thank God he'll be okay in the long run, but he is out this week. Announced today. Derek Anderson will be your quarterback. The only good thing out of this situation is that it comes on a week that they're playing the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The bad thing is that at 4-9, Carolina's still in the hunt for the division here, which is just kind of absurd. But so this is a must-win division game against an opponent that is kind of limping on the ropes, and you got to go in with your backup quarterback now. Derek Anderson's won some games before, but this really doesn't do so much for me about. This game isn't so much about the Panthers for me. It's about how bad the Buccaneers really are. 24th in defensive passing yards per game. They're 20th in rushing yards per game. And if you watched last week when the Panthers destroyed the Saints, Jonathan Stewart got off. 20 rushes for 155 yards and a touchdown. With Derek Anderson under center, I can't imagine he sees less work this week. And the Buccaneers give up $1.15 a game. 20th in the league. I'm still sticking with Carolina at home.
Keith, absolutely amazing. Both these teams are top 5 in most touchdowns allowed among the 32 teams. So this is a game at the outset you look at and you go, wow, there's a potential here for a lot of fantasy points. One of the main problems, though, is for the Buccaneers. This is a team that has a difficult time scoring. Even with Josh McCown back, they're not lighting up the scoreboard. They're still struggling moving the ball, especially in the running game. And once you get a team like that becoming one-dimensional, it's a lot easier to beat them on the gridiron, and I see the Panthers winning this one at home. In terms of the overall matchup, they're two evenly matched teams. And the Panthers' defense, you mentioned it already. Last week they held the Saints, I think it was to 10 points. That's just outstanding. To see a turnaround like that makes you say, hey, is this the same top three defense that we saw last year? Did they just rear their head and say, hey, we're still here, we finally figured it out? We don't know. But against the Buccaneers, I like the Panthers' chances. For the Buccaneers, the only people I would even consider playing this week are Mike Evans as a wide receiver 2. I love Vincent Jackson as a wide receiver 3. If you look at his last 3-4 games, he's actually been a steady contributor to the offense, and you can just plug him in as a wide receiver 3, and hopefully he should get you or help you win this week. It's bad news that Cam Newton can't play. Obviously, we're happy he's okay. I mean, if you saw the article on our site with the photographs, which is still on the homepage at the Fantasy Greek, you're just amazed that all he had were the 2 transverse fractures in his back. In any case, Derek Anderson is a suitable substitute. If you have Newton, he's likely your second quarterback, so you don't have to play Derek Anderson. But if you're in some strange situation where you were depending on Newton and no one else, or you're in a 2-quarterback league, and let's say your second quarterback is Josh McCown, I like Derek Anderson in this game. It's a favorable matchup. If Newton were healthy, he would be a low QB1 in this instance. And Derek Anderson in Week 1 had a nice game, slightly better than 250 yards passing, as well as 2 TDs, so you can look at him as a 1-week pickup and play. Otherwise, start Jonathan Stewart. Without D'Angelo Williams in, he's getting a majority of the touches he did last week. He's in line to be able to attack what the Buccaneers are giving up, which is roughly 150 all-purpose yards and 1 TD. You got to like Kelvin Benjamin. You got to like Greg Olsen in a situation where the Buccaneers are giving up 240 yards and 1 to 2 pass TDs. And if you need a 1-week pick-up-and-play defense because you got the Broncos or you got the Chargers or there's just some really bad matchup and you're like, oh, my God, what am I doing? Take a look at the Panthers. This is one of those situations where you can make the exception and say, here's a defense I can roll with. The Buccaneers, they're tops in the top 10 of most fantasy points allowed to opposing defenses and special teams. After what we saw last week with the Panthers, you got to think this is a defense that, can they repeat what they did last week? Certainly. Do they have to? No. If they could do half of what they did last week, they're going to be a good start this week. Take the Panthers at home, Keith.
All right. The Cincinnati Bengals travel to the Cleveland Browns. The 8-5 Bengals are 7-6 Browns in a very tight AFC North. And guess what, kids? We get our inaugural look at Johnny Jam Boogie in the regular season. This could be a spectacular disaster, or it could be the thing that energizes Cleveland going forward, because Brian Hoyer has played like garbage the last 3 weeks, and he basically gave Browns head coach Mike Pettin no choice but to put Manziel in. Whether you believe he's ready or not, the offense was not working with Hoyer, and ironically, since Josh Gordon came back. But that being said, this is a home game. Cincinnati's defense is not what you think it is. They're 21st in passing yards per game. They're 27th in rushing yards per game. So with Manziel coming in, perhaps that will drive Cleveland to a more run-oriented game plan. With that, then that points to Terrence West or Isaiah Crowell. For the Bengals, the thing that scares me about this matchup is that the Bengals are -3 on the year in turnover takeaway, and the Browns are +8. They've been a little bit on the opportunistic side on defense. I think this is a game that sneaks up and bites the Bengals. I'm not saying Manziel's going to win this game, but I'm saying Cleveland finds a way to win this one at home.
Keith, the bottom line in this game is that the Browns should get a boost from Johnny Manziel offensively. You and I talked about it Monday night when we did the 87 Sports Fans show, and the reality was that The Browns lost their game to the Colts by 1 point, and it was based on a Brian Hoyer performance where he was held TD-less. Johnny Manziel should be good for at least one touchdown. He should be able to boost their 21 point to